Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I hope that everyone had a good lunch. And thank you for joining us today on our webinar on utilizing energy storage and flexibility to ensure renewable integration into the French grid. Today, I'm very excited as we have two very interesting presentations to look forward to by two really great speakers. So we have Régis from ThinkSmartGrids and Corentin from CleanHorizon. But of course, before we delve into that, I have the pleasure of introducing ourselves, Solarplaza, and what we do here, as well as our webinar ecosystem. So my name is Dee. I'm a project manager at Solarplaza. And if you didn't already know, we specialize in organizing solar conferences for attendees to kind of share knowledge and as well as network. We also have the Solarplaza consultancy, and that's kind of where we partner with people for market entry and project development opportunities. We also have the foundation with lots of to generate the sustainable energy transition for everyone, and with interesting projects on the way. So I do invite you to visit these on your own time. And of course, this webinar is in the lead up for our event in France, which will happen on the 29th of June in Paris. And this is where we kind of hope to kind of start the discussion that we'll take further later. So some practical notes. If you have any questions, you can write in on the sidebar. You will see it on the kind of right of your computer. And questions will be fielded by our communications manager, Tom. So you're in great hands. And yeah, so we will start off with Régis. He is a general delegate of ThinkSmartGrids, and he specializes in smart grids, e-mobility, V2X, and renewable energy. He has also held strong roles in Enedis and EDF. So without further ado, Régis, I give the floor to you.
Oops. Okay. Do you hear me, Dee? Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'm Régis le Drezen, ThinkSmartGrids Managing Director. I need to keep attendees awake after lunch. Not so easy, especially with a complex subject. Actually, I will present you a few use cases in which flexibility plays a key role. But before presenting very briefly my association, I wanted to thank the Solarplaza organizers for the invitation and this opportunity to present the smart grid ecosystem in France. So next slide, please, Tom. Thank you very much. So ThinkSmartGrids is a French association representing the entire smart grid ecosystem at the national level. Our main objectives are to develop the smart grid sector in France and to foster international collaborations for the benefit of consumers, for the development of the territorial activity and the energy transition. Then to ensure the representation of our members to public authorities and governmental bodies, at the French, European and international levels, and to finish, to advise the industry on the innovative solutions to be tested to prepare for the future. Next slide, please. Okay, as you can see, the smart grid solutions of our member are deployed all over the value chain of the electrical system, from generation to consumption. We have solutions for network management, for the integration of EVs and renewable energy, and for prosumers, that is to say consumers who want to play an active role in the energy transition. All of that thanks to data, research and development and innovation. I will describe a few use cases just in a few minutes. So next slide. Okay, you can see on this slide who are our members. We have utilities, RTE, the only TSO in France, and Enedis, the main DSO, universities, a lot of IT startups, equipment manufacturers, and a few regional associations and clusters, and the French National Energy Regulator, like CRE, and also the Ministry of Ecological Transition, la DGEC. We have some partnerships in Africa, Asia, Europe, and would be pleased to collaborate with other ecosystems or associations. To finish, our chairwoman is Marianne Legnaud, also CEO of Enedis, the major DSO in France, with more than 35 million consumers. So, next slide. Okay, before presenting 3 use cases, just a look on this slide. In order to succeed in decarbonizing our economies, we need to electrify processes, particularly the automotive sector, and to have more renewable energy. Because we will have deployed these renewable energy sources, TSOs and DSOs, we'll have to use smart grids solutions, providing more flexibility to the power system and exchanging more data to develop new uses. Just have a look at the market growth. For France, the smart grid market is expected to reach around 6 billion euro in 2030, and for North America, it will represent more than 100 billion US dollars in 2026. So now, let me present some concrete examples using flexibility. So the first one, next slide, is how can we accelerate the deployment of decentralized renewable? We have developed in France different solutions to connect more renewable energies to the grid and at a lower cost, using sensors, algorithms, IT and forecasting solutions with a fast return of investment. Second idea is, thanks to digital substations, producers can take part in the voltage regulation. This first example shows you how the flexibility of production is already deployed in France. We have deployed forecasting tools for the high and medium voltage, and Enedis, the main DSO in France, is now working on low voltage use cases to assess the CBA, the cost benefit analysis. Next slide. The second use case that I would like to spend time this afternoon is regarding on EVs. The deployment of EVs is a real game changer for the management of the grid. In fact, with smart charging, it's possible to urge EV owners to charge their vehicles outside peak hours with a price signal, thus avoiding to create constraints on the grid. With a simple management based on peak and off-peak hours, the consumer will make significant savings. It's the figure at the center of the page. On right of that, controlling the power of the charge by modulating it according to the total power required by the house or the building allows even more savings. For this example, you can see how flexibility of consumption coming from EVs is a great opportunity for optimizing the grid. For the last figure, I have a little explanation on the next slide. Yes, on this slide, I would like to spend more time on the combining smart charging on solar and wind generation, because it will reduce local peaks in demand first, then it could be reduced the backflow of local production onto the power transmission network, and then reduce again the electricity bill of the end consumer. So digital tools have been developed for this purpose, and we name it self-consumption or collective consumption that we can describe after. So the other one, next slide, please. The third use cases for this afternoon is the description of different use cases using the flexibility of buildings. Very briefly, thanks to the smart meter infrastructure, we finished to deploy smart meters infrastructure 2 years ago in France. So flexibility is increasing. It's very easy to understand that all the data you are able to visualize and measure enable to reduce consumption and use flexibility and, of course, the associated control. So it was the 3 use cases that I would like to focus: the flexibility of production, flexibility of consumption coming from EVs, and of course, flexibility of buildings. So how can we resume my purpose? Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. The more we will have renewable energy sources connected to the grid, the more we will need to use electricity. I tried to show you a few use cases that my members, members of ThinkSmartGrids, have already deployed in the field. Now, in 2050, the need of flexibility is estimated by RTE between 16 and 18 gigawatt, and we have only between 3 or 5 gigawatt today. The second thing to keep in mind is, in France, thanks to peak and off-peak tariff, we were able to switch more than 5 gigawatt of consumption with hot water tank. So what must be achieved now and quickly in relation to the use of flexibility? 3 things. The first one is most flexibilities, probably between 60, maybe 70 or 80% will be needed on a regular basis, can therefore be anticipated in advance of the real time. And the main need will be to place shift-able consumption when renewable energy sources are available and affordable to smooth out peaks. We are pretty sure that within 10 years, maybe before, the situation will happen in the middle of the afternoon, when there will be a lot of solar electricity and therefore very cheap. And the best solution to the use of these needs is the tariff of the electricity. And in France, as I said before, we have smart meters. They can make it possible to transmit the signal or even to activate the use. The second one is the need for flexibilities for less regular needs. For example, to compensate for a sharp increase in consumption due to a period of very cold weather, for instance, correlated with a total absence of wind. So the period is a few days to a few hours before the real time, and the need for load shedding could be offered by aggregators. And then, to finish, the near real-time mechanism for which RTE is responsible, so I mean balancing mechanism on ancillary services, represent a smaller volume and are not expected to increase. So the most important, of course, is the first description on a regular basis. So now I finish. I think it was my last slide. Maybe click on, yes, I think it's, yes. So thank you for listening to me, and I can answer one or two more questions, Dee or Tom.
Yes, so thank you, Régis, for your very interesting presentation. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can put them in the box below. It's on the right of your screen. And I saw one come through. I think it's on the conclusion slide. So I think someone had a question on, can you elaborate more on the roles that aggregators can play?
Yes, aggregators can play a role. And the second example that I described, and it's for less regular needs. For instance, the most you are able to anticipate to shift consumption when there is a lot of renewable energy sources, the most tariff could be very easy to put in place. So it's for the first example. Another example is maybe for the flexibility of production. I didn't explain how an aggregators can aggregate a lot of production capacity to help the grid to switch some constraints. It's the two examples that aggregator could help on the grid.
Thank you. So I also thought what was really interesting was the slide where you talked about accelerating grid connection. So maybe you could share a bit more in detail how smart connections work.
Yes, for smart connection to the distribution or transmission network is made to the nearest existing network without electrical reinforcement. So thanks to smart connections, renewable energy project that would have been possible due to the grid connections prohibitive cost can be deployed, and the benefit on capex, so reducing investment for the climate, may be quite important. For instance, for the medium voltage, Enedis, the main DSO, has estimated the savings at around 90,000 euro per megawatt. It's a very huge amount. In addition, time saving because there is less civil engineering work, allows a faster start of injection into the grid, and of course less disturbance caused by the possible opening of the roadway. In exchange, producers accept a contract to modulate their production if constraints appear. For the future, we also could imagine to shift the local consumption when there is a lot of sun and wind. So Enedis has developed these solutions in one of the largest smart grid demonstrator in which it has participated, Smart Grid Vendée. So Enedis has deployed software solutions for forecasting the state of the network that enable it to anticipate electrical constraints.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I believe we have one more question by Haisam. And basically, they thank you for this crucial presentation. Their question is regarding the priority from a technical point of view. So they ask which one is the easier or more beneficial in terms of increasing flexibility, load or production shifting to meet demand?
I don't think that we can opposite load and production. I just think that in France we have two solutions. The first one for production, as I explained with the smart connection. For load shifting, I have presented the most solution, the best solution that we have improved in France since more than 40 years with peak and off-peak tariffs. And moreover, thanks to smart meters, now we are able to be and to deploy some peak and off-peak tariffs regarding on not night and day, but when there is a lot of sun or a lot of wind. So I think we need to deploy the two solutions for production and for load shifting.
Okay, thank you. And if we have time for one final question before we thank you, and it also segues to the next panel a little. So Simone, they have a question about the role of storage within smart grids. If you had any comments on that.
Maybe I'm not the best person to speak on storage, but I can try to say that in our association we think that for instance today to develop storage in France, we can't have for specific use cases a return on investment regarding on the price of the storage, but we think too that thanks to the storage in the EVs, probably in 2030, between 2030 and 2035, we should have more than 10 million EVs in France. So there will have a lot of capacity of storage, and one of the solution with this capacity of storage should be, because I'm pretty sure that after 2030, a lot of EVs should be able to inject some electricity onto the grid or on the house. So storage coming from EVs should be the real game changer for the management of the grid.
Okay, thank you for your answer as well, and always thank you for this presentation. It was a pleasure, and I'm sure if you guys have any more questions, Régis will also be there at the conference, so I look forward to seeing him there. Thank you. And now, second only in order, We have Corentin Baschet, Head of Market Analysis of Clean Horizon. Hi, Corentin. Corentin heads the Clean Horizon's market activities and manages key projects. In the last 7 years, he has developed more than 100 customers in understanding how energy storage enhances portfolio value, and therefore truly knowledgeable and experienced. So the floor is yours.
Heidi, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar. Um, so yeah, I was asked to make a presentation on storage in France in particular. Let me first make a brief intro to Clean Horizon. Clean Horizon, we're a consulting company based in Paris, strong of 20 engineers who works only in consulting and only on energy storage. And we do two things. One is market analysis, and the other thing is technical consulting. We work worldwide. We have designed over the years more than 10 gigawatt hour of energy storage systems. We also monitor the markets worldwide. You can see every dark blue country here is a country we've been involved in on storage projects. And yeah, we're monitoring more than 400 engagements so far since the company was created. Maybe part of explaining briefly what we do, we like to call ourselves a one-stop shop consulting company in energy storage because we can start with training, deliver market analysis to understand how energy storage systems can make money, but can also in Europe provide forecast of revenues, that is energy prices and ancillary services prices forecast. We usually also work with our clients who are developers and investors in optimizing the business model for energy storage, deciding on the sizing, the optimal discharge duration, so the megawatt hour to be installed. And then we can also support during the commissioning of the project. And even when the project is live, we can do what we call profitability monitoring, which is ensuring that the project is making as much money as it could on the market. Right, so a bit more background on storage in France, what's happening. There's currently approximately 500 megawatt of battery storage systems installed in France. So I'm only mentioning battery storage system without pump hydro, of course, here. And here you have a leaderboard of the storage developers in France. So you can see the leader today is a company called NW Group, whose business model is to develop small storage systems size of roughly 1 megawatt, which is spread across the territory, and they currently have more than 300 deployed and are looking to deploy close to 750 megawatts over the next years. Then there's you can see Total, who I think have commissioned recently their last projects, and they have so that's on some refineries they have, so they accumulate more than 130 megawatts of storage installed today. Number 3 comes the largest project actually in Europe right now. Yeah, I think it's in Europe, in continental Europe, it's the largest, close to the largest. I think there's 100 megawatt in Germany, but that's Amarenco storage project, which is just under construction, 105 megawatt. And then there's a number of other stakeholders. So you can see RT, so our transmission system operator here with 36 megawatt of operational storage projects, which you could think is a bit weird because European regulation does not allow transmission system operators to own storage. But actually this is part of an experimentation called Ringo to try storage as a virtual line. So operating battery storage to ensure there is no congestion on the electricity grid, and that's 3 projects that are currently operated. And yeah, what's not shown on this slide is all the developers which are currently building pipelines for energy storage, but have not announced any of those projects. So that's kind of the top of the iceberg. That's what I can talk about, which is public, which is not the pipeline that a lot of developers are currently building for the market that is emerging relatively, which is emerging quite fast actually. Right. So how do those projects make money? Well, that's the pile of revenue associated with the 1 megawatt, 1 megawatt hour storage project that would have been built in 2018. So as you can see, roughly the revenues for battery storage projects from 2018 to 2020 have been decreasing slightly, and that's due to the reduction of the blue revenue here, which is called FCR, for Frequency Containment Reserve, which is the primary reserve service in Europe, which is procured by 8 countries. And the revenue associated to this service has been slightly decreasing up to 2020. Then in 2021 we have hit an energy crisis, which has caused the price of day-ahead market to increase a lot, and therefore the price of ancillary services to also increase a lot, therefore driving up the revenues for battery storage systems in France. You can see 2022 has even paid close to 230,000 euro per megawatt for a storage system. For information, a 1 megawatt, 1 megawatt hour storage system roughly costs 500,000 euros. So in 1 year, the developers in 2022 have pretty much paid back for half of the capex of the storage system, depending on when it was bought, at what price, etc. But that's a good order of magnitude. So the projects that have been built already have been making a good money. That's item number one. Then what's up for 2023? The blue bar here is the revenue associated to a storage system, assuming the FCR price over the past 4 months represent the average of the whole year, which is of course not the case because we don't know yet what will be the FCR prices for April. For June to December, but assuming it remains at the same average, for now, the revenues associated to a storage system would be close to 140, so most probably decreasing after the energy crisis we've seen in 2021, 2022. So that's about how projects have been making money up to today. However, FCR is a relatively shallow market. What I mean by shallow market is that it's not very deep. There's not a lot of megawatt that are being purchased for FCR. Rough order of magnitude is 500 megawatt of FCR is purchased by our transmission system operator every day in France, and I started the discussion saying there was already 500 megawatt of batteries installed in France. So this market is soon going to saturate. So what's next? Well, what's next after primary reserve is secondary reserve. Might seem relatively logical, right? But secondary reserve doesn't have the same requirements as primary reserve, and most importantly, is not open yet as a market for energy storage systems in France. It turns out that in 2021, in November, it opened for 3 weeks, but then it closed again because that was during the energy crisis, and the government didn't want to trial new markets during that period, so they closed the auction. But what you can see is during those 3 weeks, the price associated to this service, so secondary reserve, also called aFRR, which is automatic frequency restoration reserve in France, was relatively expensive. We're looking at roughly 80 euros per megawatt per hour, when FCR is currently 10 times cheaper than that. So it's good revenue that actually took place during those 3 weeks, and we're expecting this revenue to be an interesting one for battery storage system, even though it requires a longer discharge duration than for the primary reserve because it requires longer activations. It's also deeper than FCR. When FCR is 500 megawatt, here the volume can go up to 1.2 gigawatt. So a more market depth. So that's for the capacity reservation, but additionally, there's a revenue for the energy activation, which is the payment both to reserve and also to activate the energy. So that's about the reservation, and that's why if you look at the unit here, it's euros per megawatt per hour. It's not euros per megawatt hour, it's per megawatt per hour, meaning you pay to reserve 1 megawatt for 1 hour. You pay for capacity, you don't pay for energy. But turns out there's also an energy payment on secondary reserve, and the energy payment is done through a platform called Picasso, which was launched in June in Germany. This platform actually shows relatively interesting spreads. And the spreads are here modeled through, so it's the time step of Picasso is 5 seconds, so that's a lot of prices, of course, to take into account. But what you can see is that during the 6 months period we have analyzed, the aFRR up prices are 40% of the time between 300 and 600 euros per megawatt hour. So that's a lot of money for this energy, and 40% it's lower than 300 euros. So that's for the upward. But because it is asymmetric, there's a reservation, there's an activation upwards, and there's also an activation downwards. So dark blue is upwards and light blue is downwards. And what you can see is that there are some negative energy payments for aFRR, meaning you can get paid to recharge your battery on secondary reserve when France will join Picasso, which is expected sometime next year. Right, so yeah, in a nutshell, batteries have been making good money so far in France, and we're expecting changes in the way batteries make money because FCR is not so deep. But there are other interesting revenues. I've mentioned the capacity market, of course. I haven't spent a lot of time on it, but that was the bottom of the graph here is the capacity market revenue, which, by the way, has turned to increase over the past 5 years, as you can see. But there's also new revenues, including secondary reserve, including trading on the day ahead, on the intraday, that will come up more and more, as well as participation in the balancing market. But aFRR is probably a substantial one that we should see coming sometime next year. And thank you very much for your attention. That was it for my slide. I tried to remain brief, but happy to take any questions if there are.
Yeah, so thank you for your presentation. I found it really interesting. So once again, everyone, you can ask the questions down below in the same question box. And for now, I do have a question. So I would like to know what is at stake for storage to participate in a aFRR in France?
Okay, so well, there are a couple of regulatory questions behind your question. It's actually when will the reservation auction be set up again? And that's probably expected mid next year. But there's also the fact that we should join Picasso, which will happen during 2024, according to our transmission system operator. We should go to merit order activation later this year, hopefully. So ensuring that we can switch to Picasso next year. And then there's more energy requirement for secondary reserve than there is for primary reserve, meaning we'll have to have a longer duration discharge duration battery, probably looking more at 2 hours rather than less than 1 hour for FCR.
Okay, thank you. And I think you also mentioned like there were multiple questions under that one. Like for one is when will the reservation auction be set up? I wanted to know if there are any expectations from the market from that auction.
Yeah, so for the so actually there's no exact date, and that's a real topic with the discussion with the regulators, that there's no exact date today. There's a list of criterion that were built by our regulator, the CRE, Commission de Régulation de l'Énergie. And within this list of criteria, there's a number of megawatts that need to be pre-qualified to provide the service. And it's true that the regulator himself said it would be realistic that the opening of the reservation auction is over the summer next year, but it's not firm, meaning it's kind of an expectation, but nothing is sure.
Okay, so I guess basically just wait and see, kind of.
Well, don't wait, yeah, or maybe don't wait and develop projects, and so don't wait. I think well, depends who you are, but if you're a developer, you probably shouldn't wait for this to be open. You should probably build your portfolio and build some risk management to deal with this uncertainty, rather than wait, which will end up in just wasting time.
Very wise words. So I have more questions. This comes from, oh, it is anonymous. So thank you for your question. How do you expect revenue stacks to evolve and the role of the aggregators?
Okay, so in the revenue stack, we expect revenues to diversify. That's number one, because today you've probably noticed there's just FCR and capacity market. We expect this to diversify, meaning we expect aFRR to come in, not only reservation but also activation. We expect more trading as well, be it day ahead trading or intraday trading in the future. Yeah, and we expect revenues from FCR not to be as high as over the past years, because they have gone incredibly high due to the situation and the increasing amount of batteries being deployed in this market should decrease the price, as we've seen it as a trend over the past years.
Thank you. And we have another question from Matteo. What is the ratio of megawatt slash or per megawatt hour for a battery storage to participate in a FRR market in France?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very relevant question. So for FCR, you're looking, just as a reminder, you're probably looking at 0.8 megawatt hour per megawatt. And for aFRR, you're probably looking more at 2 hours discharge duration, meaning you would need a 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt hour storage system to participate in aFRR. And actually, there is also some power oversizing, so you need to derate your installed capacity, but you need a 2-hour battery to participate.
Okay. And
Based on
Eugene?
our estimation. Yeah, sorry.
No,
Because
it's
the
all right.
pre-qualification rules are
Yeah.
not entirely decided yet, so it's computation we've done internally based on the current set of rules, which is not definitive. It's only an initial set of rules, which is probably going to evolve.
Okay. Well, all the best answers come with a qualification, very scientific. So Eugene asked, what are the digital challenges to maximize storage investments?
What are the digital challenges?
Yeah, in maximizing storage investments.
I'm not sure to entirely capture the digital challenge thing.
Maybe like software, I would say?
Sorry?
Or maybe they mean software-wise, or if
Yeah,
you want.
software. Well, there's one big challenge in storage is the data, because data collection is probably a big digital challenge. As you can imagine, a battery has a lot of data. When you look at a cell, you can monitor its temperature, you can monitor its voltage, you can monitor the intensity of charge of discharge. So that's already 3 variables. And when you have a module, you have a lot of cells. But imagine when you have a rack, you have 10 modules. But imagine when you have a container, you probably have 10 racks. And then when you get hundreds of containers, how many cells is that? And how do you monitor second by second? Because storage systems are also very fast, and you need to monitor all these parameters close to real time. So if you want to get to handle all this data properly, knowing that battery storage system can probably respond in 300 milliseconds typically, you need to monitor this every second at least. So that is tremendous amount of data that you need to share, that you need to collect, to store, and to analyze. So that's probably one of the big challenges. There's also a challenge regarding monitoring revenues, which so far in France is relatively simple, but will get more complicated when there will be more of a diversified strategy to value energy storage systems, very simply.
All right, and the next question, I guess, touches in on slightly on the amount of data and revenues as well. It's from Kevin. So Kevin asks, can storage participate in intraday and day ahead trading today in France?
Yes, technically it can. Only issue is that right now the intraday market is not so deep, especially if you compare it to Germany. We're the intraday market is 7 times less volume in France than in Germany, so it's relatively low volume. That's for the intraday. The day ahead, yes, but the only issue you've got with the day ahead is that the revenues are actually not so high right now, because the money you'll be making depends on the spread on the market, so the difference between the highest price and the lowest price. And so far, this is much less money than what you can make on ancillary services. So that's the reason why, even though it's possible, it's not currently part of the business model, but I'm sure it will be in the future, as number one, ancillary services prices will not stay that high for long, and B, project developers will have to diversify their revenues, very simply.
Okay, and I guess understanding the business model as well as investment costs. So Simon asked, can the second-hand battery world help us reduce investment costs?
That's a very good question. So second life batteries, of course, can be cheaper, but there's a lot of issues with those for now. Number one, they're not standardized. So if you take a battery pack from BMW, you'll get a different battery pack than if you get a Tesla. So if you want to take those together and integrate them into a single system, it will be difficult. Second, they will have different state of health levels, right? If you might have a battery that has been 3 years on the road and another battery that is stored and has spent 8 years on the road. So you probably need, there's a lot of ways to use Second Life. There's mainly repurposing, there's a reuse, but there's a lot of questions around how we handle this in a system. It's difficult to deal with diversity of modules and techniques. For now, it's not something that it's something that everyone is interested in. A lot of players are looking at, but it's not. Well, it's research and development so far. It's a topic which will have more interest, especially as we'll have more second life batteries, because so far we're just starting to have second life batteries in amounts that are interesting. But it's difficult to answer actually, whether it will be a cost to give them a second life, or whether it will be really that people will be ready to be paid to obtain these second life batteries, because they have a bit less state of health, but they can still be used. Of course, in stationary, we don't mind that they lose density. On the contrary to cars, we don't care if the battery is less dense, because we usually have space. We're less space constrained, but there's still all the operation issue regarding a variety of second life battery packs. That is an issue for the industry.
Yeah, well answered. Thank you for your response. And Hassan has a question. They asked you if you could elaborate more on the term first and secondary storage systems, and maybe a bit more on what is the difference between them.
Sorry, can you repeat, Dee, please? I missed the first
Of
part.
course. So they said, could you please elaborate more on the term first and secondary storage systems, and what is the difference between them?
Okay, so I meant primary and secondary reserve, not primary and secondary storage system probably got misunderstood. Primary and secondary reserve are two ancillary services. So to balance the grid, system operators are procuring what we call reserves. And primary reserves and secondary reserves is power that is being paid by the grid to ensure that there is a balance of supply and demand in real time.
Okay, perfect.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, I hope it's clear.
No, I think that was very clear. And I guess before we end this, I thought my final question would be, what would be a main takeaway you would like to leave everyone with? And then,
It's only the beginning of the French storage market.
all right, that's very energizing, I would say. Thank you very much for your time for this webinar as well. I hope
Thank you,
everyone enjoyed it. Yeah,
and
I
thank
know
you,
I
Solarplaza, for
definitely
hosting
did.
us.
Yeah, of course. It was a pleasure. And here is the discount code if anyone would like to come to the event that we're hosting on the 29th of June. You'll be able to see many of the speakers there again. And yeah, thank you very much.